person who's dehydrated and they're drinking salt water. And so maybe immediately you feel like you're quenching your thirst, getting some liquid in your mouth, but on a cellular level, you're drying yourself out more. Like, we need to interact. And so, okay, let me open up this app and go see what's going on with all these people. Feels like human interaction, but it's not. Like I said, get sick for 3 days and not leave the house and see if the people from Twitter show up with chicken soup to your house. It's not happening.
A psychologist and rabbi walk into a podcast studio. This is a conversation that I was not ready for. Dr. Shira sits down with Rabbi Shais Taub, one of the most unique, unbelievable, and popular rabbis online. I love where this conversation started, and I loved even more where it went to. They cover a lot. Thanks again to Ohel, one of the most important organizations in the Jewish world, and Touro College, the right way to prepare for your future. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's free, and it'll guarantee that you'll get our monthly show straight to your feed. Now, here's this week's episode.
Rabbi Taub, a pleasure to speak with you today. A real honor, I should say. I was looking at your Instagram. You have quite a following.
Yeah.
And I think you're well known in many areas. And I mean, I guess before we even jump into anything, how did you get into the mental health sector?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I never did. I have no intention on doing so. But you're not asking a dumb question. So how do I explain this? Okay. I understand very well why many people see me as someone who speaks to the issues of mental health. That was never my intention. I'm a rabbi. I'm not a mental health professional. For full disclosure, my father, rest his soul, was a psychologist, and I did grow up around that. His books were around, and my mother was a speech pathologist. My father was a psychologist. I heard that kind of talk growing up, but I was never trained in that area. No schooling, no, certainly no degrees. I'm a rabbi. That's what I am. Okay. Obviously, everyone has their origin story, and they're influenced by things, that maybe even beyond what they're conscious that they're influenced by. But I never set out to join a public discourse about mental health issues. I set out to offer spiritual guidance, which is, that's what I'm trained for. I'm a rabbi. What happened is that in the course of providing spiritual guidance, spiritual clarity, spiritual teachings, the way I was saying it, with not trying to package it for a particular audience, but just the way that I was naturally saying it, ended up resonating with people who were coming from various experiences of dealing with different aspects of mental health. So it was more of like, I know it sounds unbelievable to people, but it was almost like I was saying it. I was putting out a message in the way that resonates to me, and my audience was letting me know how it resonated with them. It was one of those things you find out as it happens. That makes sense?
Yeah. Meaning the feedback ended up driving you more.
Right. Although I don't think the feedback drove how I packaged the message. I continued packaging it the way that I always had. It's just I became aware of the fact, oh, that's who my audience is. This is who it's landing with. Meaning to say, I always say to people, I say it as a compliment, although I don't know if people always take it that way, that if the algorithm shows you my content, like it says, you probably have an interesting life. You've been through your struggles. Maybe you're going through a struggle. Like nobody with a normal, simple, problem-free life has Shais Taub coming up in their algorithm. But I say that as the greatest compliment. Right. There's a reason. Yeah.
There's a reason. So that actually leads me, into what I've been thinking about, which is there's been a lot of research the past few years about what they're calling the loneliness epidemic. I think, if I'm remembering my facts correctly, a lot of the research from maybe 2023 around, so a little bit after COVID, really was showing that around half of adults in the US or more have reported significant feelings of loneliness, of social isolation. And I'm curious what you see.
Yeah. It's such an interesting time that we live in because on one hand, we're more connected than ever before because of the internet, because of technology. You used to live in a village and you used to know 50, 60, 70 people your whole life. I mean, up to like 100 years ago. Even someone who lived in a city, they knew their neighborhood, right? They didn't know everyone in the whole city. And now we interact with just endless amounts of different people. So as far as like sheer numbers, quantitatively, we're overexposed. I mean, it's almost like they talk about compassion fatigue. Like we hear about tragedies all over the world. It used to be you would hear about a tragedy if it was local. Now we hear about anything that happens anywhere. So on one hand, quantitatively, we're way more connected to way more people than ever before. But then qualitatively, the question is, how deep are those connections? And I mean, the answer is obvious. They're not deep connections. If you're sick and can't leave the house for 3 days, all the people that you interact with on Twitter, they're not calling, they're not bringing chicken soup, that's for sure, right? So it's an interesting time where we have a lot more connection quantitatively, but a lot less qualitatively. The depth of our connections is much less than before. Maybe even the fact there's that disparity between having so much more quantity, but so much less quality, that may even make the lack of quality feel even more stark in comparison or in contrast with the larger quantity of relationships. I think that's part of it, certainly. I posted something, I forget which social media platform, but about third places. I don't know if you've seen some of the research on that, more of like a sociology thing, but don't know much about it. But the idea of a third place, you have home is one place and work is the second place. Third places are things that they're not home, they're not work. They're like neutral places, coffee shops, public square, where people hang out, and generally, a place where there's a lot of people. There's no high barrier to entry. Not like like a club where you're spending a lot of money, but like a park. There's a lot less of them. The malls. I mean, I'm Gen X. I just turned 52 last week, so I remember the malls were full of people. There's a lot less of that happening today. People buy things on Amazon, so why should they go to the mall? And there are many different iterations of that in different areas of life. One thing I noticed is, and I only noticed this in the past year and a half, I mentioned my father and I mentioned my mother. So the previous year, my father passed away. This year, my mother passed away. So I've been in mourning. There's Jewish tradition is there's a year of mourning. Literally happened one after the other. So I'm in my second year in a row of mourning. And one of the things customarily we do is say Kaddish. There's a prayer that we say. And some people, not only they say Kaddish during the prayer services, but they lead the prayer services. And as Jews, we pray 3 times a day. And so that means basically it's like catching a flight 3 times a day because I have to be on time for these communal prayer services. And people don't realize, they look at me, they see Rabbi, they assume that I'm a, very comfortable shul goer. I'm not. I'm an introvert. I struggle with public places. I was never I pray, but I don't like the synagogue energy. It's just overwhelming for me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm stuck. I'm forced going 3 times a day. Right. So a friend of mine who also, he lost his mother last year, and he called me up and he said, "This is really grueling." A rabbi colleague, like he's a spiritual guy. It's not like he has a problem with prayers, but it's just the grind 3 times a day, going to these public services. And he says, why is this necessary? Why do we have to do this? Why would the Torah want this from me? And I said to them, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you personally what it's done for me. I said, there's no question in my mind, given my nature and my introverted personality, that at this time of life, when I'm in mourning, there's no question in my mind that I would isolate. And there's no question in my mind that it would probably lead to some type of depressive cycle. And the fact that I'm forced to be out and about multiple times a day in the middle of the activity of communal prayer, I could pray to God alone and at home. It's not about praying to God. It's about being forced to be among people. I said, thank God it's so clear to me how that has been positive for my mental, emotional health. Forget about the spiritual benefits, or just mentally and emotionally, what a lifeline that has been for me. And I would never have done it on my own because it's not my nature. So, anyways, talking about loneliness epidemic. And, I think religious people are like the last holdouts in this world that we have of people. I can only speak, for the Jewish religious community, because that's the community that I know, but like, it's very unusual what we have in the Jewish religious community, that we do interact in real space. What do the kids call it? IRL, in real life?
IRL.
Right, IRL.
Mm-hmm.
That we have so much IRL,
Mm-hmm.
way, way, way disproportionately more than most of society today.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to talk about loneliness epidemic, totally. And, I guess I'm grateful that as a member of the Jewish religious community that we have sort of a built-in antidote to that. And I guess what I would say here, talking to you in this public forum, is I would encourage other people to seek out similar outlets the way that we have it. Join a faith community, go to attend worship services. I would really, really strongly suggest that, not just for the spiritual benefit. Like I said, you could pray to God anywhere, but for the social component.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a social guy at all, and I'm saying this. Yeah.
Well, I think it makes it all the more powerful, right? Your example is so powerful in the sense of even just that self-awareness. I would isolate. I would hermit myself. I would go into a cave of grief and of loneliness and of, solitude and, sitting with my own feelings all day.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that what you're saying is that it almost doesn't give you the option to, right, maintains a certain health in the system. I think that's such a powerful example. And I'm curious if there's any differentiation, either just from your experience or your own work in terms of ages, and as well as, I guess, what you're sort of highlighting, the religious, I would almost call it like the religious spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even thinking of people who are struggling with religion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. They say that one of the things that holds people in religion, even when they're sort of internally checked out, a lot of times the way they frame it negatively is social pressure. But I could frame it positively also and say, there's an incredibly supportive community. Right? Make no mistake. And I'm not blind to some of the issues that we have as a religious community, the judgment and pressure and things like that. That's real. And I'm not afraid to talk about that. But at the same time, there's an incredible amount of support and connection. And a lot of people are afraid to leave that because they look around and there aren't similar models that exist anywhere in society, not in 2026. Maybe in a bygone era, every neighborhood had their local watering hole. You go down to the bar and, it wasn't just like drinking. It was more like socializing, and, you have your community, or even people had like sports leagues, and that was more common. Or the religious community really does provide something that has become increasingly rare in the world today. And If you would have asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have had a different point of view on it because I am introverted, and I would have probably said, well, there is a social aspect of religion, but it doesn't do anything for me. And I don't personally, I don't make use of that perk, right? And today I would say I do make use of that perk. Begrudgingly, I hate it. It stresses me. When I'm out in public, I come home and I collapse because I get like exhausted just from human interaction. But at the same time, just because it's exhausting doesn't mean it's bad for me. To the contrary, I know that it's good for me. And like, you were saying before about how like, I don't have the option. Like you didn't say I was forced, but yeah, I kind of am forced, right? I think that's also healthy. Not just in this instance. There's so many instances of, I think today people have too many options. They make their own rules and they decide what's right for them. And that freedom is very alluring, but they don't always, as human beings, we don't always make the choices that are best for us. And sometimes it's very healthy to just have a higher authority say, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, this is what we're going to do, whether you like it or not. That's very healthy.
Boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when everything's an option, then sometimes that's not good for us. Keep things focused. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's yahrzeit is coming up this week. And someone once asked him about all the limitations of Jewish religion. And he said, it's like a laser. A light disperses. It doesn't travel that far. But a laser, because it's focused, then travels clear all the way, for far, far distances. That's the idea of focus. It's like limitations help you to keep your energy where you want it to go and not just sort of dissipating out all over the place. Yeah. It's also something that's lacking. And maybe this is connected to the loneliness epidemic. When you have the options of connecting to everyone, you're connected to no one. And I think there's parallels in a lot of other areas of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially with social media, I question sort of how much of this epidemic is linked to the rise of social media. Obviously, COVID had an impact. But how do you see social media impacting this phenomenon?
It's almost like a person who's dehydrated and they're drinking salt water. And so maybe immediately you feel like you're quenching your thirst, getting some liquid in your mouth, but on a cellular level, you're drying yourself out more. Like we need to interact. And so, okay, let me open up this app and go see what's going on with all these people. Feels like human interaction, but it's not. Like I said, get sick for 3 days and not leave the house and see if the people from Twitter show up with chicken soup to your house. Then it's not happening. So I think there's other issues with social media as well, like people comparing themselves to others, competition, and looking at somebody's highly curated fake version of themselves and then coveting that. But one of the issues is that I think it's a low effort substitute, but it's not a real substitute for something that is a basic human need. And it satisfies just enough that it feels like you don't have to really go out and meet that need in a legitimate way. Yeah. What do the kids say? Touch grass, right? Get out and touch grass. Put the
Touch
phone
something
down.
real. Yeah.
Have a real experience. Yeah.
It's interesting. What you're describing really explains a lot what I hear very often in my work and my personal life about social media use, right? I can scroll for 2 hours, not even knowing that 2 hours have passed, and then find myself so empty.
Yeah.
And I think you just put beautifully into words that exact feeling.
I heard this. I don't know if he was the originator of this, but I heard this from Richard Simmons. I don't know if people know who he was, but he was a television personality. He was a spokesman for the cause of fitness. He was an interesting person. Very, very interesting person. Anyways, I remember him saying, it was about overeating. He had been obese and then he lost weight. So he said, you can never get enough of something you don't really want. The fact that you like you say, you can scroll for 2 hours and the time just flies by. You don't even realize that it's happening. It's precisely because it's not really giving you what you want. Like if it were able to hit the spot, if it were emotionally nourishing, then you could have a nibble and you could feel, oh, that did something for me. But the fact that it's pure junk food, that's why another hour and another hour, and like there's no passage of time because you're not really filling anything. So there's no end. When are you full? You're never full. Yeah. Yeah. And then in the meantime, because that's time, see, two things are happening. Time that's wasted scrolling, two things are happening. First of all, you're not really meeting a need. So that's a waste of time. But then two other things are happening. One is you're not actually interacting with real people. So that time is lost. Those opportunities are lost. And then another thing, I don't hear people speaking about it. I shouldn't say no one speaks about it. I haven't heard people speaking about it. We actually do need downtime. I think it's very important for people to have decompression time, spacing out, vegging out. I don't think that's laziness. I think some of us need it even more than others. Like I said, when I go out and I'm out and about among people, I come home and I collapse because I just need to. If you do your decompression time while scrolling, you don't really get the benefit of that decompression either. It's kind of like, sleeping, but you've got like the radio on and so you're not fully sleeping, but so it's like decompressing, but you're not really decompressing. You're looking at different images, which the algorithm has primed to be like rage bait and like getting, triggering you. It's trying to, that's how it keeps you engaged. Just trigger. That's not relaxing. That's not decompression. So, there we are. We're not meeting our social need and we're also not meeting our relaxation needs.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent for at any time in the day that it thought even occurs to you, put your phone down, take a drink of water, and take a walk around the block. Just anytime you think of it, even if you don't think you need it, just if it pops into your mind, put the phone down, take a drink of water, take a walk around the block. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to waste 10 minutes? You could easily waste 10 minutes on the phone.
It's so true. And I'm sort of hearing a theme in the sense of we as people don't always do what works. We don't really do what works for us.
No. See, what we do and we don't. Life is such a paradox and humanity is so paradoxical. On one hand, I come at it from a faith perspective that God designed us really ingeniously and we have great survival mechanisms. And that's why a lot of times when you look at people's behavior that makes no sense, if you look at it closely enough, you'll realize it originated in some type of survival mechanism. So that's on one hand. And we could talk about more of that. But on the other hand, sometimes we don't do things that make sense. And it's not helpful for us. Like we're our own worst enemy. Now, how do I reconcile those two things? Because they are both true. The way I reconcile is pretty simple. A lot of the most dysfunctional stuff that we do originated in a survival impulse, but the survival impulse exceeded its functionality. So in its origins, it's a God-given mechanism to keep us alive. And if we would have left it at that, it would be superbly efficient and productive. But what happens is it exceeds its functionality, becomes a focus unto itself. So, if I have this built-in mechanism that reminds me to eat so I don't starve to death. That's great. If that mechanism exceeds its functionality and tells me to start obsessing constantly on food, and now I thought of this special babka that I want to eat, and now I'm driving 30 minutes out of my way because I need to go to the special bakery that sells that babka, and now it becomes an organizing principle of my life, and I'm spending my whole life on this hamster wheel of getting all the yummy food. Well, now it's not helping me live. It's interfering with my ability to live, right? So it originated with a God-given survival mechanism. It exceeded its functionality and it became counterproductive to life. But that's why, so a lot of these things, like for instance, let's go back to the social media. Where did the original mechanism come from? Our basic need to connect with others, right? But then if we don't have a real way of doing that, so we search for a substitute, and then that becomes a pattern, and patterns become comfortable. Something about human beings, we don't like to forge new neural pathways. We like the familiar. There's something comfortable. I guess it's like a well-worn pair of shoes, neurologically speaking. And then we get caught in the pattern, even though it's like it's no longer serving the original purposes it was supposed to. Like it's far from serving any productive purpose, but now we're stuck. No, not really stuck because we can get out of it, but without a lot of self-awareness, if we're just going to go passively, we're stuck. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
That's why, we need these discussions, because just left to our own devices without reflecting on any of this stuff, we're not going to make the best choices. So we do need to have discussions like this and call things to our attention and stop once in a while and evaluate and just ask, how much are my habits and my routines serving something productive? You hear the criticism a lot. This generation, they're so obsessed with their mental health. We didn't have these problems. And I have many answers to that. But just one answer is, well, just because you're not paying attention to something doesn't mean that it's not happening. And a lot of the self-awareness that exists in this generation is simply about stopping and taking stock and just asking a question, like, how much is this productive? How much do I want to do this? How much am I doing this just because I've always been doing it? And how much do I actually want to continue this because there's a purpose to this? And I think that kind of self-reflection is necessary for a productive life.
We'll be right back to this episode, but first, I want to tell you about Ohel's counseling services, which provide a supportive space to work through challenges, strengthen relationships, and grow in every area of life. At Ohel, therapy isn't just for when something feels seriously wrong. Sometimes it's about having someone to talk to, or gaining a new perspective, or working through a difficult season, or simply becoming the best version of yourself. Ohel's mental health experts take a whole person approach, which means recognizing that our emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being are all connected. As Rabbi Taub and Dr. Schwartz shared, in a world where so much of our communication happens through screens, there's something so powerful about sitting face-to-face and connecting with another person. Ohel's mental health experts create a safe, supportive environment where you can be heard, understood, and encouraged to move forward. Whether you're navigating stress, relationships, life transitions, or simply looking to make positive changes in your life, Ohel offers counseling for children, teens, adults, couples, and families. Ohel's in-person counseling locations are conveniently located in Flatbush, Far Rockaway, and Hillcrest, Queens. And for those looking for connection and community, Ohel also offers a variety of support groups focused on personal growth through shared experiences. With compassionate, personalized support, Ohel helps people not only address challenges, but strengthen the many areas of their lives that contribute to overall well-being. To learn more about Ohel's counseling services and support groups, visit ohelfamily.org or call 1-800-603-OHEL, which is 1-800-603-6435. Ohel Counseling Services, support for where you are and encouragement for where you want to go. Now back to this episode.
And as a psychologist, I feel like that's really the point where many people find themselves in therapy, when that awareness comes into life and says, something I'm doing is not working for me.
Right.
Right. Something has gone out of balance. Something is, not having me live the life the way I want to be living my life.
Right.
And there's so much more openness to that now than maybe there ever was.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot more to say on the generation of this mental health.
My question for you would be, I know you're interviewing me, I'm not interviewing you, but I have an insatiable urge to always find out more. I like to learn. I hate to talk, actually. I don't like to listen to myself.
It's ironic.
Ironic, I know. When people come to you and they say something's not working, do they know what's not working, or they're just aware something must not be working because I don't feel right, but I don't know what it is that needs to be adjusted?
More often that.
They don't know what's wrong.
Not necessarily. Yeah. Very often not. They don't. Very often people don't have a sense of, this is really the core of where things are not working, and this is what I want to work on. It's very often a lot more messy than that.
Right. Do they even sometimes misattribute it? Like, I think it might be.
For sure.
And they're looking in the wrong direction.
For sure.
How do you steer somebody when they're thinking, this is my problem, and you're thinking, well, not really. That's a red herring. That's a distraction.
Right. Well, I think it actually connects so much to what we're talking about, because so much of it, and we're not going to go into all the modalities and the frames. And, I think it's a lot more broad than many people give it credit for, which is really, this idea of, I want to help people do what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
If doing drugs and partying all the time and, a certain lifestyle, if it works for you, go for it. It's really when it's not working for you. And maybe we could call that a misalignment in values.
Mm-hmm.
We could call it, sometimes very often a communal pressure that doesn't feel right to me, or I don't really believe in what I'm doing, or again, we couldn't even call that values.
Right. Yeah.
But I think values are a huge part of it. And I think really this idea, coming back to what we're talking about, of being able to do what is going to be most healthy. Actually, I recently heard the term secure functioning.
Okay.
And I like that a lot.
Okay.
Right. The term sort of, how can I securely function as an adult? Right. Healthy, not healthy is even a little bit more, we can argue. But I want to function.
How do you distinguish between healthy functioning, healthy versus unhealthy, as opposed to secure functioning? And I guess the opposite would be insecure functioning.
Right.
So why is secure functioning for you a better term?
Mm-hmm. So I think the word healthy can often have a sense of stigma in it, or even a sense of judgment. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of an example. Maybe smoking weed. Okay. Right. A few times a day.
So you said something that I think most people are going to be shocked by, and they're going to be even more shocked that I'm reading their minds, but they're going to be more shocked that I just let it slide when you said, if somebody's partying and whatever, and that's what they like, it's working for them, more power to you, go for it. And I was like, yeah. Now, I didn't explain why I agree with that. I do agree with that. But I have to, qualify that. But explain, I mean, I'll give you my explanation after I hear yours, but so let's say somebody has this, you picked randomly, so someone's smoking weed. That's what they're doing. Okay. So you might say that's unhealthy. Okay. But you're saying that's not as useful to you as saying, is it secure or insecure? Explain to me the difference.
So I think secure goes beyond just an individual, in the sense that there's a network almost. Okay. Right. And I mean, really, the context that I heard this term in was in a couples therapy context. Okay. So, right, as a couple, as a unit, as a family unit, as a larger than myself sort of picture, right? Is this working? If I'm smoking weed, I don't know, 6 times a day, and I feel like it's working for me, I can still do my job, I can pay my bills, right? That's one thing. But if, my husband's over there saying,
Right.
You're not doing any of the things that I need you to do. You're not showing up as a partner. You're right, whatever it is, or the family members or
Right.
children, or right. That's when I think we sort of have to look beyond ourselves. And I think that's really what it comes down to with people is, is this working?
So secure refers to the system around you.
I would say so. That's how I see it personally.
Like, not just, is this working for you? If you zoom out, is this working in all of the ways, in all of the areas that you are in touch with, that you affect and that affect you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So earlier, when you said, somebody's making, I guess I can use the term unhealthy choices, because that's kind of how you're defining healthy and unhealthy. But they are insisting, but this works for me. And you're saying, okay, fine, no problem. And I agree with that. Why do you say it doesn't interest you, or you're not particularly motivated to try to convince somebody that something isn't working for them if they insist that it is? Because I have very strong feelings about this. But what's your point of view?
It's a great question. I think that we as people automatically own our own judgments, our own, even I myself as a psychologist, I have my own religious beliefs. I have my own standards of living. And almost like, who am I to say this doesn't work for you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that question also is loaded in and of itself. Like, what does it mean to be working for you?
Okay.
Right. It needs to really work for you, right? You're fulfilled. You feel content in your life. There's a certain, we could say, menuchas hanefesh that you live with that really, there aren't these gaping holes. And I think very often people will say it's working for me when it's really not working for them. Right. So there's also that distinction.
You're going to refrain making a judgment, is what it sounds
or
like.
I'll deepen it with them, right? I'll try to really understand. Is that true?
Is
right?
it true? Yeah.
Right. Is it really working for you? Let's understand, right? Let's dive into some of your relationships.
But you're saying for you, it's coming from humility. Like, I'm not gonna be the arbiter to determine if it's working for you or not. Like,
and I can't be the judge of someone else's life.
So it's interesting. Somebody just came over to me the other day and said, why did you say that therapy is amoral? Okay. I think it was an Instagram reel from like a year ago.
Mm-hmm. And
I did say it, but I remember also writing it in an Ami column. I think I wrote it more than once. I got it from my father. My father, may he rest in peace, was a psychologist and a religious Jew. And he explained to me that by definition, now there's a difference between amoral and immoral. Immoral means I know the difference between right and wrong, and I choose wrong when it's expedient. I don't care. Amoral means I'm not concerned with questions of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he told me that therapy, the culture of therapy, is amoral. And that's what clinical detachment is. Like, who am I to make a moral judgment about your life? And he told me that's not Torah. Torah is about morality. We make judgments. And he, for a while, I think, went through a conflict. Like, how did he balance his professional capacity with his religious beliefs? See, as a rabbi representing Torah, I can't be amoral. I have to be concerned with morality. And nevertheless, when you said, if it's working for you, okay, fine. And I was like, okay, yeah, I agree. I come at it slightly differently because, and I like the way you're saying, like, for you, it's about humility. It's about, like, who am I to judge? And on a personal level, I agree with that because who am I, Shais Taub, to judge? Like, I'm no greater than you. I'm no greater than anyone. Now, on the other hand, I'm a rabbi. I represent Torah. Torah does have moral judgments. That's what Torah is. And nevertheless, I agree with you. But here's why. And I learned this also from my father. The biggest waste of time is trying to fix a problem for somebody or even with somebody that they don't agree is a problem. If they don't agree it's a problem, there's absolutely no point in trying to convince them that it is. So if someone comes to you and says, this is my lifestyle and I'm 100% fine with it, you are wasting your breath trying to convince them that there's a problem. And in fact, my experience has been the more you try to work on solutions for something someone does not yet recognize as being a problem, you're nodding even before I say it. Say it, finish the sentence.
I mean, 100%.
The more, what happens when you try to fix it before they're ready?
The worse it gets, the deeper their feet get stuck in the ground.
The longer the timeline of eventual
100%.
healing.
You're prolonging the process of 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's part of, I think when I'm saying there's no, who am I to judge, right? That's not, without the real caveat of really, putting out all the cards on the table and saying, are we sure that this is working, right? And really, for sure in my work as a psychologist, understanding, okay, you're smoking weed 6 times a day. You're also telling me you can't focus on anything, right? So is there something that could be different here that might feel even better for you, right? There is a lot of depth of work, which actually is making me want to come back to what you were saying a little earlier about depth in relationships. And I even want to say like depth in people, right? How can we cultivate, facilitate, create that depth in people, that curiosity about themselves?
Yeah. You're going even deeper. You're saying it's not just the people don't have that quality of depth in their interpersonal relationship. They may not even have it internally in their relationship with themselves. And that's because we're highly distracted. So we don't go deep. I have often told people how grateful I am for Shabbos as a Torah observant Jew. Being forced, first of all, to drop technology, but also you're not able to work. You're not supposed to be involved in anything mundane, meaning anything that's worldly, anything that's work related. And it's supposed to be a time for spiritual reconnection. And part of that means just quiet time with yourself. Shabbos is supposed to be a time for being able to be with your thoughts, stepping away from all of the distractions. But I think people are so dependent today on their distractions that I even see like, because it's so scary to be distraction free. See a lot of times, even on Shabbos, in a way that's technically permissible, but people just keep the distractions going. A lot of and I want to be careful how I say this because I know that I'm coming at this with a personal bias against it because I've told you about my personality. I think a lot of the socializing that happens on Shabbos is not nourishing. I think it's real distraction. It's like, here's this day when we have an opportunity to examine our lives deeply. And instead, there's just a lot of shallow connection. And it's a shame. It's such a wasted opportunity. Yeah. And I know that people who hang out at the Kiddush and they socialize and maybe even they drink. And I know for a lot of people, that's something they look forward to all week long. And I'm not, and again, who am I to judge? I'm not saying it's wrong. Just saying, okay, great, do that. But also, do you have some time for reflection? You also have some time for reflection? We don't reflect. How many people today, like I'm actually curious. I don't know if studies have been done on this, but I wonder how many people today are capable of thinking for an hour. Just thinking for an hour. I don't mean reading, where somebody is giving you thoughts to think about, although that's certainly, I think, takes more mental muscle than scrolling. But I'm saying without even a book, without a podcast going, without anything, just sitting with your thoughts for an hour. I think that was normal. I think once upon a time, that's what people did. I also think when many more people were involved in manual labor, what do you think they did? Or, you're sitting at the potter's wheel or the loom, churning butter or whatever you were doing. You were thinking. And now today, it's like, somebody was saying to me the other day, he's like, I can't remember the last time I got into an Uber and the driver didn't have like a headset and was in the middle of a conversation. And he pointed out to me, and I started realizing, like, so true. And you start thinking, like, what are these people doing? They're driving around all day. I'm not even talking about the distraction from driving. I'm talking about the emotional, just the dependency. That what do you have to have an 8-hour WhatsApp call going? Because God forbid, without it, you might have to sit there with your own thoughts. I think it's a global issue. I think 2026, everybody is suffering from this. Like, when's the last time? Even go on a drive and don't have a phone call, don't listen to a podcast, just drive. We can't even do that. And so then you talk about one of the effects is people don't examine their own lives. Yeah, sure. That's obvious. I mean, we see that. You see that. I think there's going to be a big push. I think there's going to be a pendulum swing. It's going to happen. And it's not going to be because of an awareness campaign. It's not going to be because people are going to come out with public service announcements. Put your phone away. I think it's going to happen spontaneously. And there's going to be like this revolution. We're going to be like, we're sick of this. We're sick of this. Like, not going to be a slave to this. You know what's interesting? So I used to do a lot of public speaking. I used to travel a lot, frequent flyer on several airlines, constantly flying around, speaking engagements, a lot. That was my bread and butter. That was like my main thing. And it's interesting, you talk about my Instagram, for instance. I only started an Instagram account like right before COVID.
Wow.
Like, I think it was like 2018, maybe that I started it. I didn't know that, but I think it was 2018. Before that, I used to travel and go to speaking engagements all the time, multiple times a week, different cities, different countries. Then there was COVID. There was a lockdown. It all stopped. People stopped doing public events. People were scared events would get canceled. They didn't know the local regulations. And then everything became permissible again. You can make an event, but nobody wanted to. Let's do it on Zoom. Why do I have to get out of my pajamas? Why do I have to go to a place? And all the speaking engagements it was funny because I didn't plan it this way, but when I started to blow up on social media, thank God, because I had something to keep me busy, because all the speaking engagements went away because people just don't do as many events. Mm-hmm. My prediction is real life events are going to make a huge comeback. People are going to get sick of screens, and they're going to say, if it's Zoom, I'm not doing it. No, I'll do it if it's real life. If there's food, if we can sit across from each other and there's food and there's real life, I'm there. If it's Zoom, no, I'm not doing it. And not because they're protesting. It's just going to be a natural thing that's going to happen. And it's going to be very, very healthy.
And human beings crave real life connection. I think that's also, something that, I personally feel is true. It's a human need, like you said before.
Real life connection, real life experiences in physical spaces, in real time. There's something today, like for instance, just as I was coming up the stairs, and we'll give a little behind the scenes over here. So I saw our friend, Rabbi Yaakov Langer, and I said to him, I'm in the middle of watching your Lucas Gage podcast right now, which is incredible, okay? But you know what? If this were a bygone era, the era of television, where it's on and then it's over and then that's it. You don't know when there'll ever be a rerun. I would have had to stop everything else I'm doing and finish watching it. I have the luxury now. It's a 2-hour podcast. It's incredible. I stopped an hour in. I said, I'll watch the rest later. Now, first of all, as interested as I am, I don't even know if I'll watch the rest later because Living Lchaim will put out another podcast that I won't watch. Right, okay. But I'm saying there's a loss of urgency. Like, yeah, I'll watch it later. But then we carry that attitude over to so many other things. Yeah, I'll do it later. Yeah, because nothing is happening in real space in real time. So it all gets deferred. I'll do it later. And that's one of the beautiful things about digital experiences, that you can pause and you can start and you can do it anywhere. And, I'll finish watching it on the plane, right? There's an advantage to that. But on the other hand, it's like, no, there has to be certain things. Like if I'm going out for coffee with someone, I don't get to say, oh, you know what? Let me pause this and I'm going to go do something else. And I'll come back in an hour and see if you're still sitting here.
Right.
Like there's a commitment. You're here. You got to see this thing through to the end. Yeah. And we don't have that today. And I think there's a lot of issues that we have that we don't realize stem from that. As I'm talking to you, it's occurring to me. Even I've been thinking about this for years, but even as I'm speaking to you, I'm realizing the extent of it. I haven't fully appreciated.
We don't sit with ourselves. We don't sit with what we're doing. We're in an age and a life where things move so fast, so quickly. Like you're saying, things come out, so content changes over so quickly. It's really remarkable. And
if you thought this episode started, get ready for the next part. But first, who hasn't faced financial stress, family struggles, or health challenges? Mental health allows us to handle life's pressures, build stronger relationships, and live more productively. Yet, millions of Americans struggle with depression, anxiety, and other conditions that affect their well-being. If you want a rewarding career helping others achieve wellness and reach their goals, consider becoming a clinical mental health counselor. At Touro University, you can earn your master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and gain the skills to guide people toward healthier, more fulfilling lives. The program combines academic rigor with hands-on experience, including 700 hours of clinical fieldwork tailored to your strengths and interests. You'll learn from dedicated faculty who provide individualized mentorship and support. Flexible 2 or 3 year study options let you pursue your degree full-time or part-time while working. Touro partners with clinical hospitals and treatment centers throughout the region, giving students diverse opportunities for training and employment. Many graduates are hired by their fieldwork sites. What I love about it is Touro's program is accredited by the CACREP, the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs, ensuring the highest national professional standards. Learn more at s.touro.edu/MHC. Of course, click on the link down below and start your future today. Now back to our conversation with Rabbi Taub.
I think maybe this can be even a challenge for the audience, but just to, find something to sit with and sit through it, right? And, maybe try to avoid the urge to pick your phone up or, dive your brain into something else at the same time, whatever it might be. We don't do that, or it's hard to do that.
In addition to, you spoke about IRL experiences with other human beings, and then you went into with yourself. I also want to recommend physical projects. I have this house, the center, half a block from the Ohel, from the Lubavitch resting place. I'm coming there from there right now. Actually, I was giving my weekly class live stream. It's interesting, by the way, why I have that physical place. Because I'm such an introvert, when I blew up on social media, I had this perverse like excitement where I said, oh, I'm so big on social media, I'll never have to go physically to an audience again. And the second I had that thought, I realized, like, what did my soul come into this world for? Why am I in a body? To have to be like a brain in a jar, like a disembodied soul. Just no, you have to have physical, you have to have IRL. So I got that physical place and we have events there. But that's not even what I'm talking about. In the backyard, I started doing gardening.
Wow.
Just today, I was checking on my jalapenos.
How they doing?
Well, it's touch and go, but God willing. Okay, pray for my jalapeno garden. First of all, my hands get dirty. I'm touching soil. But also, you can't fast forward it. You can't pause it, and you can't fast forward it. Real time. But the real time, the rhythm of nature, like the growth of a seed. I have fruit trees that I planted a year and a half ago, and I'm like watching them and each season, and I prune them, and I'm aware of when is the winter solstice, so I can do the winter solstice pruning, and you can't fast forward it, you can't pause it. It forces you to be in objective time, and I think I can't even put my finger on why it's so healing, but it is healing like nothing else that we can experience through all. It's the technical breakthroughs, the technological breakthroughs we have. I don't want to pretend like I'm not grateful for it, because it's amazing. Look, I can tell you personally, I've been able to inspire millions of people in a way that if I were doing this even 10 years ago, I would not have been able to do that. So I'm grateful for technology, but gardening, what else? I don't know. Walking to places as your transportation. I don't know what else. What other some IRL stuff that's
a good question.
By the way, taking care of animals too. I'm a big believer in that.
Kids?
Oh, having families. By the way, that's a thing you see today with Gen Z. Like, it all goes hand in hand. They don't want to have families. They don't want to raise kids. What's the point? Yeah, that's the big one. I'm talking about plants and animals. Kids. How about some kids? Yes,
some
yes,
kids.
yes.
Art. I mean, there's
art. Yeah. Yeah. Cooking. Yeah.
Absolutely. Creating
stuff.
Also,
that's another thing about creating. We use these apps to consume. Not healthy to be always on the receiving end. We need to create. I mean, for me, I try to create like a ratio of like 10 to 1. Like for everything I consume, I try to create 10 things. So creating, but also not just creating, because you could create digital content. It's not the same as creating something physical.
We didn't even think it was going to connect when you first came in, that you're starting a cooking show. I hope it's okay that I'm
for sure. This
I'm mentioning it. And this is
a
a plug, but after people watch your episodes, the challenge will be go home and do it yourself, and maybe with someone else, maybe a friend, a child, a partner.
By the way, some of the best parent-child bonding is in the kitchen. Really, it's a great way to bond. And don't be sexist and think I'm just talking about mothers and daughters. Fathers and daughters, fathers and sons, mothers and sons, all the different combinations. Cooking together is so, you're cooperating and you're communicating, and there's banter in between, and then in the end you have that something you created and you taste it together, and this feeling of accomplishment. Great bonding. Cooking is, yeah.
Any other practical advice or thoughts you have, either on the individual or communal level, of what people can do to connect on a deeper level?
Yeah. It's interesting. Jewish people are called people of the book. And, normally, at least me, I think about it as like, oh, we're very studious. But that's not what I think it means. Because then we could be called people of wisdom. A book is a physical thing. There's something tangible, something physical. God gave Moses the tablets of stone. It's like it's physical, it has weight, has dimension. And yes, there's the oral law, which is infinite, and all the depths of the teachings, and that's also important. But it's grounded in the written law, which is physical. And the tablets were kept in the Ark, in the Holy of Holies. If you go to the Holy of Holies, in the center of it all, in the most sacred spot on earth, and what is there? This physical object engraved in stone. I speak a lot about sensitive souls. It's a term that I use to describe people who are struggling with embodiment. Because I think a lot of issues that we describe with other models, not to take away from the two things can be true at the same time, but a lot of issues that we describe using other models, I can more conveniently, at least for me, conveniently understand them in terms of sensitive souls who are struggling with embodiment. In brief, all souls are sort of foreigners in the physical world. We're not from this world. We're from another realm. But most people seem to acclimate rather quickly, and they become used to being physical beings to the extent that they identify primarily with their physical container. And then there are certain people who just never really acclimate. And these are the people who are always sort of struggling with life. A lot of them have sensory issues, because they're just overwhelmed by all the stimuli that the body is picking up on. Highly sensitive, empathic very often, picking up on energy. And so a lot of these people have this desire to leave the physical world. And it freaks people out. It sounds so morbid. What, you want to die? No, I don't want to die. It's just, I don't want to be a soul in a body. I want to go back home, right? I describe it as being homesick for a place you can't quite remember. A lot of addicts, are basically self-medicating this condition of inherent restlessness, of just feeling, out of sorts. And you ask, well, what's so bad about your life that you have to self-medicate? No, it's not conditional. It's not circumstantial. It's existential. Existence itself is painful for me. And like the only real resolution is to find meaning in embodiment. This has been my big focus. I'm 52. I had a birthday last week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And definitely since I turned 50, but definitely the past 2 years, but even starting a couple years before that, I've really, really been focusing on this idea of embodiment, the importance of it, the inherent worth of it. Like God did not make a mistake when he sent your soul to this world. Souls were not meant to remain in heaven. They were sent here for a purpose. And we're not supposed to escape it and numb ourselves from it. We're supposed to inhabit it and be present in it, lucid and sober for it. So I've become very aware of everything that helps ground us. Like sometimes I have a group called Soul Survivors. It's a monthly group. We get together, we meet sensitive souls. I call it Soul Survivors, SOUL, because usually Soul Survivors, SOLE, like the one and only survivor. This is SOUL, Soul Survivors, souls who are struggling to survive this embodiment experience. Like they say, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we have this monthly group called Soul Survivors. And if you want to check it out, it's a subscription thing, but I'm not trying to sell it here, but it's soulwords.org/Soul Survivors. And we speak a lot about being integrated, like inhabiting our embodiment. And one of the things I speak to them a lot about is acts of goodness and kindness. Because for a lot of us, we get into our heads. We love ideas. And it's really important to get into our bodies. So that's acts of goodness and kindness. Like I was saying before, if you're sick for 3 days, people from Twitter don't bring you the chicken soup.
Mhm.
Okay, be the one who brings the chicken soup.
Right.
Inhabiting your body means be the one who brings the chicken soup, or attending each other's happy occasions. For years, I did not attend a happy occasion because I hate being in public. Then I realized how spiritually important it is. Showing up to places. Sharing meals. You know, as Jewish people, we have it built in a lot. You know, Shabbos meals, holiday meals. But like that's really important. Sitting at the table, eating food together. The physicality of it is what gives it its power. Spending time in proximity. I'll tell you an insight that I had, and I'm wondering how much you'll relate to this. So I'm known as a communicator. Like, I guess I'm away with ideas and words, right? And that's, to me, how I, for a very long time at least, how I perceive my value. What value do I bring to any given situation? I'm smart and I'm eloquent, right? And if I wouldn't be, people wouldn't have me around. And I think I told him, 52. I only realized in the past couple of years how consistently I was under the impression that people needed my words. They needed me to be profound. They needed me to have an insight. I was under that impression. And the reality is they just needed my physical presence. And I wasn't doing that because I didn't value it. I didn't value it. In fact, to the contrary, not only I didn't value it, I rejected it. What's so stupid? I'm going to sit here in your, why are we sitting? Why? If I have something profound to say, then I have value. If I don't, why would you even want me to, why would you want me to be around? And I had to realize, like, sitting there in silence is not doing nothing. Like, sometimes that is the most healing thing you can do. It's just, and you have to be physically there for some reason. I don't know why it's that way, but it's just to be present, and you don't have to have some genius insight. You're just there, and that could be incomparably more healing than all the fancy words. You know what I'm talking about.
I more than know what you're talking about. I live what you're talking about.
That's what I suspected.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's even, you know, I can say it about the field that I'm in, but I think even just human beings in general, we don't give ourselves enough credit for just being, and how powerful it is for us to just be present with our kids, with our friends, with whoever it might be, just to be there, just to listen, just to show up. It's almost like, I don't want to give it a number, but I would say like a high percentage of what truly is needed.
Say showing up. I have a very dear friend who told me this years ago. Said you could fake caring, but you can't fake showing up. And that hit me so profound, because caring is intangible. It's like, it's a feeling. How do you prove a feeling? You could trick someone to thinking that you feel something that you don't feel. Or let's not say that you don't feel it at all, but you could make them think that you feel something more than you really feel it, right? Of course, how would they know? They can't read your mind. But you can't fake showing up. It's binary. Either you did it or you didn't.
Right.
Either you were there or you weren't. And I started to realize something so about physical showing up that is so powerful. You can't half show up. Either you did or you didn't. Either you were there or you weren't. Mental, emotional energy, like they fluctuate and they're in flux, and they're even in the course of one conversation, there could be ebbs and flows. But physical presence is constant. You're there the whole time you're there. And I think there's something that we, as ironically enough, as spiritual beings, I think we as human beings are primarily spiritual beings, but there's something as spiritual beings that we require in physical experiences. And we cannot get that nourishment from spiritual experiences. What do I call spiritual? I mean, an idea. An idea is not material. An idea is intangible, right? Where does an idea exist? Nowhere. Not in time space. It's energy. And ideas are, I love ideas, and I spend my whole career is about developing ideas and communicating. Beautiful, beautiful. But the real power is in physical presence. Being able to sit in the same room with someone you care about and not having to talk. And I don't know if it's a lost art, if there's less opportunities for it, or we're doing other things. But just because we don't know how important it is doesn't mean we don't suffer from the lack of it. It affects us. I'm saying us collectively, humanity today. We're all sort of collectively suffering from the lack of these physical experiences. I'm the first one to admit it because I don't naturally value it. I don't. And it was something I learned. It's hard for me. It was maybe for some people it's natural. Not natural for me. It was a real epiphany for me.
And like you mentioned before, I'm hopeful that it's going to turn.
Yeah, it's got to. Got to.
I think we are headed in that direction. I hope we are headed in that direction.
What's interesting is, so I know we're heading in that direction because as Jewish people, we believe in Mashiach. Interesting. What is Mashiach? Translated, Messiah. But what does that mean? Mashiach is this physical world in its perfected state. It's not heaven, not going to a spiritual realm. It's this realm. Perfection of this realm. To the extent that we're even told that the dead will come back to life, which is a very powerful idea. The dead, that means souls that are in heaven. But when the physical world is perfected, there will be something so alluring that it'll draw these souls out of their blissful heavenly experience. Don't get me wrong, they're loving it up there, and yet they'll be magnetized to come back to their embodiment because there'll be something about the physical plane that is so alluring.
Interesting.
And it's also that era in history, the Messianic era, is called an era of entirely Shabbos. It's like the day of Shabbos, but it's a whole era. So if you think about it like that, that means Shabbos is a day similarly that is, although it's spiritual, we tend to think, oh, it's a spiritual day. It's actually a very physical day. The day for being present and embodied. Mm-hmm. It's an analog day. Mm-hmm. It's not a digital day. It's an analog day. Mm-hmm. So you got any homework for people if they want to?
I was about to ask you that question.
Gardening. Yeah.
Cooking.
And
it sounds to me like the homework is find something to challenge yourself to be really present in and see how that affects you.
Just notice.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be with other people. That too, but
could be watching a podcast till the end.
Right. That might be like a, transition, like training wheels.
Right.
Like it's a podcast, so it's digital, but I'm not going to leave the room.
I'm not going to
And I'm
pause
not going
it.
to pause.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to do 1.25 speed.
Right. I'm going to act like it's the 80s.
I'm gonna, yeah, I like that.
Any other final thoughts, wisdom?
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these things, to examine it a little bit more deeply. I'm 100% positive that we couldn't have, or personally, the insight that I gained from my conversation with you could not have happened if it was emailing back and forth. It had to be a in-person experience. And we encourage people to have in-person experiences, real-life experience, IRL experiences as much as possible.
I agree. This was a very enlightening and inspiring conversation for me. And I thank you for being here and for your wisdom.
Thank
And
you
I
for
hope the audience feels that as well.
This episode was a ride. Please leave the word wow if you watched or listened to the full episode. Now, be sure to check out Rabbi Taub's social media, his website, his courses. And thanks again to Touro and Ohel. If you'd like to suggest a guest for our podcast, you can on livinglchaim.com. More conversations that needs enlightenment and to be discussed coming your way. So hit that subscribe button and stay safe. And also, Lchaim.
Living Lchaim.